What if water is the bridge between information and physiology? What if water is that bridge for healing?
A lot of time we hear this from skeptics about attacking homeopathy, saying, oh, it's just diluted water. It's like putting one drop into all the oceans of the world. How can it work?
I truly believe that in the next few years, with everything that is coming out around water science, around the emerging quantum biology of water, the behavior of water, this is going to give us the anchoring and the foundation and really the posture and the conviction and okay, there is this unshakable truth that homeopathy works, it is highly effective, and it's very much here to stay, and it's the medicine of now, it's the medicine of future.
Water has a memory. This has been a theory for homeopathy for a long time now.
It can't be just water. There has to be more to it, because I'm the living embodiment of that, and I'm...
Hi homies, it's Marcus Fernandez here, founder and director of CHE, the Centre for Homeopathic Education. After 5 years of releasing a brand new podcast episode every single week, Eugenie is taking a well-earned break and has kindly asked me to look after the show and spend some time with you all. Over the coming weeks, I'll be bringing you some inspiring conversations with guests from across the homeopathic world and beyond, along with the occasional tasters from our CHE Pro membership library, what many of our members affectionately call the Netflix of homeopathy. Whether you're a seasoned practitioner, a student, or simply someone who loves homeopathy, I hope these episodes leave you informed, inspired, and reminded of the incredible potential of this medicine we all care so deeply about. So thanks for joining me, and now let's get on with today's episode. My guest today is Yasmine Miles, a homeopath, flower essence practitioner, hydration educator, and the founder of Hydrated Homeopath. While studying for a degree in biomedical science, Yasmine discovered homeopathy and found it more than a system of medicine. She discovered a philosophy that would profoundly shape her life, her work, and her understanding of health itself. Driven by a deep curiosity about the nature of healing, Yasmine began exploring the fascinating relationship between homeopathy, water, and the human terrain. Her journey has led into the worlds of living water, coherence, frequency, vitality, and the emerging field of quantum biology. Today, Yasmine works with clients internationally. She leads workshops, speaks passionately about the intersection of homeopathy, hydration, and human well-being. Her work challenges us to think differently about what health really is and how we can cultivate greater vitality in our lives. In this conversation, we'll explore water as more than just a substance, the role it may play in healing, and how a deeper understanding of our inner terrain could transform the way we think about health. Please welcome Yasmine. Welcome, Yasmine.
Amazing. Thank you for having me here, Marcus. I'm really excited to have this
I'm
conversation
really
with
excited
you.
because homeopathy and water goes together. It's such a almost an integral part of homeopathy for a long time, and there's many books and films made just one drop. And often, a lot of time, we hear this from skeptics about attacking homeopathy, saying, oh, it's just diluted water. It's like putting one drop into all the oceans of the world. How can it work? It's a load of rubbish. And so it's really great to have you on it, because I know you are absolutely fascinated by water and what it can do and the whole properties of water. So I want to do a really deep dive into that. But before we do, just tell me, Yasmine, how did you discover homeopathy? What got into homeopathy? What was your journey? Because every homeopath has a story.
Yeah, gosh, my journey. Well, to be fair, I was raised on homeopathy. I just didn't make the connection until I was deciding to become a homeopath, because my mum called it magic pills and she never called it homeopathy. So I never actually realized that I was taking homeopathy my whole life. And then, it was actually when I was in the middle of my biomedical science degree. I think I was in my second year. And I'd gone through some pretty deep personal health challenges as well. I was dealing with really severe PTSD. I was having daily panic attacks. I had IBS-like symptoms. It's you name it. I was really struggling with it at the time. And I tried all the conventional protocols. I was doing therapy. I was taking sertraline. I was taking all sorts of stuff, and nothing was shifting.
And was that antidepressant?
Yeah, but I was prescribed it for anxiety, but it can also be used as an antidepressant. It didn't actually shift things for me, because at the time as well, I would have between 2 to 5 panic attacks a day, and that was the biggest thing for me. I really wanted something to help with that, but nothing was. And then that's when I started. I mean, I didn't get to homeopathy straight away, but I actually initially I started with EFT, emotional freedom technique
Mm,
tapping.
yeah,
That
very
really
good.
helped. I got into Kundalini yoga, I got into breath work. I was like researching. I was basically trying to find something.
How old were you
Um,
then, Yasmin? How old were you at that time?
I was like 21, 21,
Mm.
22 at the time. Yeah. And I just went down a rabbit hole trying to find everything. And then that's when I actually stumbled across homeopathy. And it was, I mean, I think now that I speak to so many people, a lot of people I think sometimes do come to homeopathy almost as a last resort.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, what have I got to lose? Like, I might as well just try this because nothing else is working.
And
I
isn't that a
have,
common story, Yasmin? And it's
yeah,
like, I've
yeah.
tried everything else, last resort, nothing else is working. Let's try homeopathy.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what I did. I tried homeopathy. At first, I tried to self-prescribe, which didn't really do too much. But then I actually started working with a homeopath and I didn't quite understand what was going on. All I knew is I was feeling better. And I went from, having multiple panic attacks a day to then having some days when I wasn't having them at all. To then eventually, like, my bloating went down. I was able to eat food again. I was able to live a normal life. I was beginning to see that I was living a normal life. And that really sparked my interest. I was just thinking, gosh, what's this? What's this stuff?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And it was really challenging, the ideas that I had about what medicine is, what healing is, because, in my degree, we were doing 40, it was like 40 hours of lab work, like a month. It was really clinical. I was then specializing at the time. I was choosing to specialize in pharmaceutical drug design. So I was really going down this other route. And to be fair, it aligned because at the time I was also I was having issues with my degree, basically. I was
Mm.
struggling to connect with it. And the biggest thing for me was towards the end as well, right? We had this thing where you have to study and learn like 60 different types of drugs inside out.
Mm.
And you're effectively trained to prescribe drugs for more drugs. And I was just sitting there thinking, when am I going to actually learn about health,
Healing people and health.
healing?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah. And that's when I had a very candid conversation with my supervisor at the time because I was really struggling with it. And I just said to him, I was like, I don't know what to do. I'm not connected with the course. I'm struggling to like have motivation to do the work. And he just turned around to me and he said, I'm going to be totally straight up with you. This is the industry of sickness, right? He said that this is a sickness industry. This is about profiting, right? And you can't profit off of health. And when I received that at the time, I was like 21, 22. I was thinking, oh my God, what am I
Wow.
going to do?
Yeah, what a statement.
It was a statement. And I wasn't prepared to receive that because I thought he was going to say to me, oh, yeah, just do this and you can get through it. But no, he was like, this is what it is. And he said to me, he was like, you know what? I'm going to tell you, I think you should get out because I don't think you have the right profiles for this.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
In other words, you can't suspend your sort of beliefs about health and well-being and curing the sick. You've got to be basically an extension of the pharmaceutical industry and to be able to promote their drugs.
Yeah, totally. And honestly, bless this man because I could really see I could see he also was disconnected from it. But the whole conversation we had, he said that he was just too deep in it at this point and it
Yeah.
was a life path that he chose. But he was very much change your path. And I
Wow.
just remember feeling like, what I've just invested several years of my life into this. What the hell am I gonna do?
Yeah. Like you said, he was trapped in it. He was, that's what happens, isn't it? You get into a system, you got to pay a mortgage, you got to pay the bills, you got a family, then you're in the system. Then what do you do? And I've spoken to so many people like that and they're trapped in it. And like you said, it's a system. And as I always say, the pharmaceutical industry is not in the wellness business, it's in the sickness business. As long as you're aware of that. And that's exactly what he was confirming.
Yeah, absolutely. It was. And so that from that point, that really inspired me to be like, okay, let me start looking into things. And so I remember I was like Googling massage courses and all sorts of stuff. I hadn't yet made that connection. And then I actually remember so vividly.
Actually,
I,
just before you
yeah,
said, sorry, were you seeing a homeopath at this point or not?
I was.
Yeah,
Yes,
but
I
you
was.
didn't make the connection between what she was, well, the homeopath was doing, and you were receiving these little white pills, and that was like a medicine. That you
Yeah.
hadn't made that connection. Sorry,
I
carry on.
hadn't made that. No, I hadn't made that connection. And so that was also what was interesting. I was feeling better, but it's that thing, like so now, when I work with my own clients, it's that thing when people come back to me and they're like, oh, nothing much has changed. And I'm like, well, actually, quite a lot has changed. And I reflect that back to them because they forget. And I think that's actually what was happening to me in that moment when I look back. Things were improving and a lot started shifting very quickly. It wasn't just my physical health, it was also my emotional health. It was my relationships. It was even me having this conversation, I feel, with my supervisor and having the courage to have that conversation. Looking back now, I can connect that to the homeopathy I was taking. But at the time, I didn't necessarily see that. For me, it was like, okay, I'm getting a bit better now. Yeah, my life's
Yeah.
changing. I still hadn't quite twigged that it was the
But in a
homeopathy.
way, but that's a very common homeopathy. But in a way, it's
Yeah.
good because, like I said, homeopathy is a gentle system of medicine. So once you've removed the symptoms, people just get on with their lives. And I know that I've had the same with clients. People come back, how are you? I don't think I'm any different. Okay, how are your migraines now? Oh yeah, I think that was the same. Okay, when was the last time you had one? A couple of weeks ago? Oh right, because you were having them every other day before. And oh yeah, I suppose they are.
Yeah.
So it's once things go, we tend to get on with our life, which how it should be, shouldn't it? In a
Yeah.
way, no, it's how it
Absolutely.
should.
Which is honestly the power of it, I feel as well. It's
Yeah.
that subtle, it's that drop in the ocean, right? That you were
Yes.
mentioning at the beginning.
Exactly.
And for me, it was very much the drop in the ocean. And it was just to not to go too deep into it, but like I was at a point where I didn't want to live, really. I mean, the way that I was behaving, I had very destructive behavior. I was drinking a lot, smoking a lot of cannabis. I was just really in a very dark space. And basically I almost had no will to live in a way. Not like I wasn't actually a harm to myself, but I was in a very dark place. And then for me to go from there, just through the homeopathy, to actually start participating in my life again, and looking for
Yeah.
something and actually having that spark. I mean, that was incredibly powerful, but I think I wasn't able to make the connection, you
No.
know?
But that's what
Um,
homeopathy does, though, doesn't it?
yeah,
It gets you to reconnect to who you are again, that innate health that we have, that innate health on all levels, mentally and emotional as well as physically. And I was saying this last night on a webinar that that's the job of a homeopath is get you back to that state of reconnection to who you really are, who we were born with. Like you said, that innate health that we we're born with.
absolutely. Yeah, it returns us to our original blueprint.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
And so I feel like that's what it was doing for me. It was actually realigning me with my true life path because when I was a child and growing up, when people would ask me what I want to do, I was like, I want to do something innovative and healing, is what I would say.
Wow.
Because I
Wow.
was always really obsessive with, with healing and with health. And I really wanted to do that. And so
Mm.
it sort of brought me back in because I originally thought, okay, the path to that is I wanted to train in the biomedical world because I was like, okay, that's the study of disease. That's how
Mm.
I'm going to create impact. For me, it's
Yeah.
like, I want to create impact. I want to create change.
Yeah.
And yet, when I was in it, I quickly realized no change is going to happen here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
You hit the wall, you hit the dead end.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so then, yeah, that's when I started obviously looking for something other. And yeah, at that point, I mean, homeopathy was already in my life. And then it was that moment of me looking for something, looking for massage courses. And I was like, okay, this isn't making sense. And then it was one of those moments where, and I remember, I know you've said this before, Marcus, in different things, where homeopathy finds you. And I genuinely feel in
Yeah.
that moment, it was like, it just dropped in. I was sitting at the kitchen table and I just remember, I was like, let me just type in homeopathy. I just thought, let me just have a look at
Yeah.
this. And then that's when I mean, this was in like end of July, August. It was end of the summer. And I remember I actually found CHE
Mm.
and I saw there was like an open day, but I'd missed the open day, but there was still applications. So I thought, you know what? I'm just going to email. Let's just see what happens.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I did. And then I came for an interview that day. And then that day, I also, again, that alignment that happens because Miranda Castro was doing a whole day lecturing talk for the first time in the UK in 10 years as
Yeah.
well.
It's CHE. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's funny because the only homeopathy book that I did ever have a connection with was her book because my grandmother had it on her shelf. So I had seen
Wow.
that book before. So I was like, wait, I know who this is. And then I remember sitting at the back of that lecture room. And it was honestly, it was like this aha moment for me. It was truly, I was like, oh my gosh, this is the missing piece.
Mm.
It felt like the piece I'd been looking for, but not known I'd been looking for. I was like, this just makes so much sense. Of
Yeah.
course, we're looking at the whole picture. Of course, everything is interconnected, right? Of course,
Yeah.
we can go to the root of things with this. So,
And like you
yeah.
said, and this is what we said, I say it a lot. You don't get into homeopathy, it finds you when the time is right. And just that coincidence of it happened to be a day that you were invited to come along for your interview, but also then asked, hey, if you want to sit in this lecture with Miranda Castro, whose book your grandmother had on a shelf, you can start to, it's like you follow the breadcrumbs. It's like,
Yeah.
this is what I mean when I say homeopathy finds you. You don't find it when the time is right. It comes to you and the time is right. And you talk to any homeopath, every homeopath has got a story. I like that, how it pulled them in. I won't repeat my story. People have heard it 1,000 times, but
Yeah.
like I said, it will pull you in. And that insight that you had sitting
Mm.
in the back of that very packed room, it was a gift,
Mm.
wasn't it? It's like I always say, an insight comes of itself. It comes of
Yeah.
itself. It's not forced. It comes and it's very neutral. It's, of course, this is the right thing.
Yeah,
Amazing.
it was. It was. It was truly exactly that. And
Yeah.
exactly that. Like, I genuinely, when I say that it was that, I had this realization of, wow, I've been seeking this. There is that calling, it's that resonance, really. It's like the frequency of it that pulls you in. And then, yeah, and then from there, when I actually started training and becoming a homeopath, I think the most interesting thing for sure is like in that first year of doing that, I was still like I was finalizing, my degree at the same time. And
Mm.
that was a very interesting experience because it was like one, I would call it more the biomedical, obviously the biomedical way of thinking, right? The biomedical framework, which is considered the gold standard of health and healing. I was in
Yeah.
that. And then simultaneously, I was having to kind of unlearn a lot of ways of thinking
Yeah.
and shift into what I now would call the bioenergetic way, which is the homeopathic way, that holistic way, and having them happening simultaneously. I
Yeah.
think it
Wow.
was also giving me that full spectrum, right?
Well, it's
And
almost like you had to hold two ways of thinking, two paradigms around health and well-being in your head, almost very
mhm.
schizophrenic in that way.
Yeah, totally, totally. And it was interesting because even during that year, the supervisor that actually gave me that insight, I actually let him know, oh, hey, by the way, this is what I'm doing. I'm actually, I thanked him. And his response really took me by surprise because he
Well,
turned
you
around
told
to
him you're
me,
doing homeopathy.
yes.
Yeah.
And he's, oh, I didn't mean go and do something like that. That's what he said. He's like, that's quackery. That's
Yeah.
literally what he said. And I didn't even know what quackery meant at the time. I had to go look up the words, but I was like, what? And then he was one of the first people that said to me, it's just diluted water. There's nothing in it. He's like, oh, it's all a load of nonsense. It's all a load of pseudoscience. And then I had actually quite a few of my colleagues at the time, actually, then that all were repeating this at me, telling me
Yeah.
there's nothing in it. It's just water. It's pseudoscience.
Yeah.
I'm going to ruin my life.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, I felt like I'd found my calling.
Yeah. So how did you, because that's a very common thing. We hear this a lot with students at CHE
Mm.
who've jugged. In fact, Summit, who's a GP, is about to graduate. We were talking about this, how you can hold these different types of ways of thinking and unlearning a lot of stuff. But
Mm.
so how did you balance that? How did you balance about that skepticism with what you were doing?
Honestly, it fueled me. And this is
Oh,
also just
okay.
part of a little bit of who I am. But I remember getting into some sometimes relatively heated discussions with people, particularly in the biomedical world, where I was like, but it can't be just water because I was using my lived experience. I was saying because I felt at that point as well, I was making the connection between my recovery and the homeopathy I was taking. And at that
Yeah.
point as well, gone really deep. So I was no longer having any panic attacks. I've been told I had IBS, chronic IBS. I had all those symptoms were gone. I was living a totally different life.
Yeah.
And so I was saying to them, I was like, it can't be just water. There has to be more to it because I'm the living embodiment of that. And I'm listening to other people and listening to these homeopaths that have been in practice for decades who are sharing their experiences. And then they'd go, oh, but explain the mechanism of action to me. And I'd say, I can't. I remember saying, I was like, I can't explain it, but one day I'll figure out how to explain it to you. So that for me, it was this sort of fuel. And if anything, it just egged me on. I
Yeah.
was like, I need to get into this. And I didn't realize it then, but that was also the seeding for me of my passion into water.
Yeah.
Because then I started thinking, there has to be more to this story
Yeah.
here, you know?
Absolutely. So let's talk about that. So you qualified, and when you qualified from CHE, you're on the fast track training, weren't you? You did the fast track. So
Yeah.
so you qualified. So what then pulled you into? Because obviously it was there then. When you was
Yes,
there
it
then as a
was.
student,
It
that
was.
desire. So just tell us a bit about your journey from that point on. You qualified, and then how did you get into
Yeah.
it?
So during the homeopathic training, anyway, I went down what I call the watering hole. As in, I started already getting really obsessive. Obsessive is very much the word, even about the water that I was drinking, because I started finding out that how much of our body was water and all of this. And I was reading theories about,
And what
I
is it?
mean,
It's about 80, is it 80%, 90%? What are we? And adults is different than kids and all that, isn't it?
yeah, it is. It's obvious physically,
Yeah.
we're between 60 to 70% water adults. It's roughly 70%. But on a molecular level, we're over 98% water.
Wow.
So water is integral to everything. At the time, though, I was just, yeah, it was more about the water I was drinking, which is where I started getting really deep into that. And then I also I learned about the Flexner report.
Oh,
Do
yeah,
you know
yeah,
about
yeah,
the
yeah.
Flexner report? I
Yeah,
know
maybe
people.
just explain it to people that don't know what it is.
Yeah, so the Flexner report, so it was a report commissioned in 1910 by J.D. Rockefeller and the Carnegies, where basically they got Mr. Flexner to go around to all of the hospitals, all of the health institutions to assess.
He's in the
This is
US.
in the US, but
Yeah.
bearing in mind at the time, prior to 1910, this is the forgotten history, our forgotten medical history. In the US alone, there were over 100 homeopathic hospitals. There was loads of pharmacies, homeopathic pharmacies. In hospitals as well, you would have herbalism, naturopathy, you would have sun decks for people to heal with the sunlight. It was a much more integrated approach to health and healing. And so when the Flexner report came in, what happened is that Flexner deemed that all of these practices were quote unquote unscientific. And in less than 10 years, this totally shifted the landscape of healing. So this actually went to the root of education. So they shifted the educational model to the biomedical model that we are also familiar with today, right? And so this is also why we've had this forgetting, because it shifted from the educational point. So the way that doctors are also learning health totally shifted. And so I uncovered this, which obviously was interesting for me. But then what I also saw at the time was that it was in 5 years later, in 1915, there was loads of research being done in Germany and France into the power of healing water technology, specifically something known as electrolyzed reduced water technology. And people were healing through water. And then again, the Rockefellers, who were originally funding this, pulled all funding and actually suppressed a lot of this information of healing with water. And this is all something that you can actually look up. There's a few research papers on this. So we have a paper trail of this. And so that was really interesting to me, that at that point, there was a way to heal, and they were showing curative effects in over 40 different disease models. And they decided to totally remove that information. And then it was only the Japanese in the 1960s that started revisiting it. But the point is, I was like, okay, there's a deeper story with water here. I didn't quite get it yet. And so, yeah, so then I was just looking into the water. So I qualified. I then went and I worked at Nelson's Homeopathic Pharmacy working the acute advice line. And that's when I invested in like a living water system, because I wanted to drink this electrolyzed reduced water. So I got that. And then how did it even from there just kept unfolding? I then got into Dr. Gerard Pollack's
Yeah, Gerald
work.
Pollack. Yeah.
Yeah.
The phase of water. Yeah.
Yeah, the fourth phase of water.
Yeah.
I don't know if I should explain what that is or if it's
Yeah.
fine.
No, explain it. Yeah, definitely explain it. There's a book out, Gerald Pollack. I saw him speak at the Royal Society of Medicine back in 2018 when he was talking. It was a conference around the evidence for homeopathy. He was a great speaker. I think it was the University of Washington. I think he was in. You can check him out online. He's on YouTube videos. Very interesting man. But yeah, talk about Gerald Pollack's work.
Yeah, he's also got a really great TED talk and stuff. So yeah, so Gerard Pollack, so he's uncovered that water has this fourth phase. So most substances, well, every substance on our planet has solid, liquid, and gas, right? For the most part. But then water has this fourth phase, which is seemingly in between a solid and a liquid. It's also known as exclusion zone water, or EZ water. So this phase, it forms adjacent to hydrophilic surfaces, so water loving surfaces. And it has these properties where it's highly ordered. So it literally forms like a honeycomb-like structure, like a kind of like a liquid crystal. It excludes all solutes. It has this net negative charge. And this is actually what's interesting about this is what is now being uncovered is that this very structured water, this highly organized water, it exists in a cell-bound state, and it lines all of our proteins, all membranes, all cell membranes in our body, all our DNA, our mitochondria, our fascia. It effectively forms what is being termed this body-wide water network within
Mm.
us. And this is the thing, right? So this exclusion zone water, this fourth phase water, it responds to infrared light. And so this is where I've made that connection where people that, obviously people using a lot of infrared light.
Hey, I'm a big fan.
Yeah. Well,
Infrared, near infrared lamp, either sauna or I've got an infrared, near infrared panel. Phenomenal.
yeah, that increases your structured fourth phase water in your body. That's
Wow,
what
didn't
it's
know
doing.
that. Didn't know that. Yes,
Yeah.
that's amazing. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that was
Yeah.
great. No,
Yeah.
that's why I
I
feel
mean,
good. That's why I feel good when I
exactly.
use it.
It's what you feel good. And I
But
forget
not only
actually
that, let me just say about these red light panels.
yeah.
Our whole family uses it now, and the cat will lie in front of it, the dog will lie in front of it. It's like there's almost naturally they're attracted to. As soon as that light's on, they're in there. And
Yeah.
so isn't that fascinating? But carry
Well,
on.
they can feel that. They
They
can
can
feel
feel
it,
it.
right?
Yeah, yeah,
This
yeah.
because this is the thing. So this cell-bound structured water, it's not stable in the sense that it can degrade, and there's different things that can degrade it, like electromagnetic frequencies, different toxins in the environment, and it actually behaves in a really intelligent way in the body. So say if we have an area of inflammation, for example, which can be categorized also as a loss of electrons or whatever, the cell-bound structured water, the negatively charged water in our body is sent there because it's negatively charged. It has free electrons. So it actually helps to reduce this inflammation in the body, which is why it can diminish. So then when you have something like infrared light, it can increase that. And there's also been a really interesting study. I forget the actual name of it, but it was only a few years ago, really, where they started looking at the impact of glyphosates, so like pesticides and like different stresses, different toxins. And the common thread that they found is that exclusion zone water, it diminishes in response to all of these things that we know aren't good for us, but it also then increases in response to light and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So
Amazing.
yeah, so it's amazing, right? This literally, we're still uncovering everything this does in our body, but it actually also behaves like a battery in our body. And Gerard Pollack has also very much compared it to plasma, right? Which is that fourth state of matter that we find within the universe. And
Oh,
so
not blood plasma, not no,
no.
Yeah,
No,
plasma.
like actually like plasma from the sun, it's that
Yeah.
kind of very charged energy. He compares it to that. I mean, it is also a bit like plasma generally the way it works, because this is the interesting thing, right? If you think about our computers, our phones, whatever it is, they're all powered by crystal technology.
Yes.
And so the way that the structured water is in our body, it's like a liquid crystal. I often say we're like walking liquid crystals. And so that's where it also starts. The conversation deepened for me, or the thought process deepened for me of like, okay, maybe there's something more here in the sense of crystals store information, right? Frequency is information. So maybe this is also one of the theories, maybe this is how our body is storing information, is storing memory, right? Storing memory in the water, because we have proven that water has memory. And this is where it started deepening for me of like, okay, maybe this has a correlation, a connection with how homeopathy is working with the body and in the body.
On that level. So,
Yeah.
so with that, just explain that a bit more. Because, like I said, yes, water has a memory. This has been a theory for homeopathy for a long time now, hasn't it? I think was it Jacques Benaviste and
Yeah, let's get into that actually.
and Luc Montagnier, who won the Nobel Prize, joint Nobel Prize winner for the discovering the HIV virus. He continued Jacques Benaviste's work, didn't he, until he passed. So yeah, talk a bit about that.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because I also want to note that it's no longer a theory. Like
Okay.
it's very much a fact now that water holds memory. So Jacques Benveniste, he pioneered this work. He was an immunologist, and he basically prepared immunological cells in a homeopathic way. So there was no material dose left. And what he found is that the liquid with the diluted and succussed cells was still exhibiting biological action, right? There was still biological action happening, even though there was nothing physically there. Now, the issue with Jacques Benveniste's work is that many people struggle to actually replicate his work. So his work was largely dismissed. But then with Luc Montagnier, he then was the one that really essentially proved that water holds memory, because he, again, what he did is he got DNA and he prepared DNA in a homeopathic way, meaning that he diluted it and succussed, which is vigorous shaking, right? And to the point that there was no physical DNA left within the solution. However, they then used electromagnetic frequency reading devices, and the solution was still transmitting the DNA sequence with 98% accuracy. Right.
Wow.
And so this was incredible, because what they did is they've actually replicated his work. They replicated it in labs around the world, and everyone was getting the same results. Right. They followed it to a T. That essentially what he showed is that even though there was nothing physical left in the water, it still was carrying the transmission of the DNA code.
Okay,
Right.
so yeah, so I just want to ask a question around actually this little side note here that Dr. Alexander Tonnier, one of our CHE graduates who founded the Homeopathic Research Institute, he worked with Jack Benavides. He worked in his lab.
Wow.
So this is really, I think, a really important point. So this is not for everybody to listen. This is not just about dilution, right? It's
Yes.
about dilution and it's about succussion. Because I remember at this conference, again, you can listen to this on YouTube. It's called Water, the Evidence for Homeopathy. I think that's what it's called. But it's at the Royal Society of Medicine. If you search in YouTube, you'll see all the different lectures. And Luc Montagnier was speaking there, as well as Gerald Pollack. But what I understood when I attended was they did experiments with just diluting
Oh.
things in water. And then they obviously did the homeopathic preparation, dilution, and succussion. And what they said is the succussion part, which was the key to the homeopathic action of the homeopathic remedy. Would you say that? Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that. That's always been the niggle in my mind, honestly. And it's the hypothesis I'm working with at the moment, because sure, if we were just diluting something, okay. But the point is, when you're succussing, what you're doing is you're introducing kinetic energy. And this is where generally, right, we don't yet know 100%, okay, this is the mechanism by which this solution is becoming biologically active
Mm.
through this preparation process. However, there are two models to explain this that are coming out actually of the quantum biological world. Okay, so quantum biology is a little bit different to your traditional biology, right? Because it's it's an emerging field, first of all, but it's really looking at coherence, resonance, wave behavior within living systems.
Mm.
And before, it was kind of dismissed because they thought, okay, quantum physics, you can't apply that to like the mess that is biology, because biology is a little bit chaotic.
Yeah.
But living systems do have this quantum coherence. They seem to work in this energetic way, and they're systems of energy and information, right? And so there's effectively these two theories. So the first theory is by a doctor called Martin Chaplin. And basically, Martin Chaplin has suggested that memory resides in the dynamic hydrogen bond networks that continuously reorganize themselves within water. So, what most people don't know, what I didn't know, is that water is constantly shifting. It's constantly like breaking and restructuring, breaking, restructuring. So, his theory is that is where the memory is stored. Whereas
Mm.
the other theory, which is actually the theory that I personally align with a little bit more, because I
Mm.
think this is where we could align the introduction of kinetic energy, is Emilio Giudici. Forgive me if I've said his name incorrectly.
Mm.
Emilio Giudici's
Yeah.
work.
Yeah.
He's described something called a coherent water domain. So what he's identified is that the way that water actually behaves is that water molecules, they actually cluster into a very specific formation, and they oscillate
Mm.
around these regions where they actually carry electromagnetic frequency in the middle. So they behave like a unified system rather than as independent molecules. And so they actually can then sustain and stabilize and transmit frequency information.
Wow.
And so this is the model that more and more people in the quantum biological world are aligning with. I'm studying with Dr. Catherine Clinton, and she also aligns a little bit more with this model. And coming back to the preparation of homeopathic remedies, it's like when you're introducing the kinetic energy, this is actually supporting and stabilizing the formation of these coherent water domains that are
Mm.
then effectively holding the frequency of the medicine. And what is frequency? Frequency is information. Everything has a code.
Yeah.
So that's what is happening with a homeopathic remedy. It's like the code is being held within these water domains. And then my further theory and hypothesis, which I would love to one day actually like do some, I don't know, invest in some sort of research or work with people to do this, because it's like, I hypothesize that then when you take the remedy, it's speaking in the language of the body, which is that it's speaking in the language of frequency, which is the language of the water body. So it's giving our body-wide water network the code, which it then proliferates, if that makes sense. Right?
Absolutely. Well, I'm just thinking about back to Hahnemann and who obviously put homeopathy together as a system of medicine. And towards the end of his life, and in fact, when he passed away, all they found was LM potencies. And he thought he talks a lot about water. And there's many homeopaths around the world that use plussing and water. I love having my remedies in water. There is something about it, I think, I don't know, intuitively, I feel is much more powerful in a lot of ways. Same with flower essences, black flower, all Australian bush essence, all the different essences. So it sort of makes sense, doesn't it? It really makes sense. So do you think through this, you are discovering the mechanism here of how homeopathy works within water?
Well, I'm proposing it. I think I wrote an article for the New Homeopath, which is a journal, which is effectively, that was the first time of me putting my hypothesis out there. And I do think if we start, because now we have the technology, right? I think before we didn't have the technology to actually research this type of thing and to do research on a quantum level, but now we do. I'm not 100% sure how we do it. It's something I'm looking into. But yeah, I do think that potentially this could demonstrate the mechanism of action.
Yeah.
Because then we can get in even a little bit deeper, or like we can talk about light, okay? Because what has been shown, so light, the way that light is transmitted in the body is as biophotons, as light particles. And what has been found is that water it stores and transmits biophotonic particles. And there's actually Dr. Stephen Cartwright.
Oh, yes, Stephen Cartwright, yeah.
Yes, he's done quite a recent study, actually. I think it was like 2019, 2020. It's only a few years old. But what he did is he basically was looking at different homeopathic potencies and looking at the light spectra, the light emissions. And even so, the same remedy, but different potencies, they emit a different spectrum of light.
Wow.
And light is...
And he could pick that up.
Yes.
Wow.
He could pick that up. He could pick that up. And this actually aligns separately outside of the homeopathic world, but aligns with biophotonic research by Fritz Albert Popp, right? Which he demonstrated that living systems communicate via this ultra weak light emission, which is transmitted through the biological waters of the body. So piecing together these different, they're totally separate research articles, but Dr. Stephen Cartwright's work is also showing how homeopathic remedies have these unique light signatures. And so I do then theorize that when we take a remedy, that it's giving the body's receiving that light, that photonic light information, that's all it is. It's information. It's a code.
Yeah.
And then the body-wide water network, what we're uncovering is that actually it's the most foundational aspect of health and healing. It seems to coordinate the healing systems in the body. It seems to almost coordinate the homeostatic mechanisms, which then, if we get into the vital force, right, this is where I've been trying to connect it with Hahnemann's teachings, where Hahnemann spoke about this dynamism in the body, this vitality. And there is very much something here within the dynamism of this body-wide water network that has been so largely overlooked by the biomedical model. Very much looks at water as this passive solvent, whereas what we're now beginning to comprehend is that water is the foundational aspect. It literally coordinates everything, that we are water.
Yeah, it makes sense. So we're mostly water. We're so, how much water is in the earth, of the oceans, and the whole is fundamental to life.
Yeah, totally. And we gestate through water, right? We literally in water in our mother's wombs for 9 to 10 months.
Yeah.
It makes sense.
Drinking our own urine and weaning out. Well, that's a whole nother podcast of urine therapy. I've been there, done that, got the t-shirt. But yes, you're right. It's such a, when you think about, I always think life is simple. Life is always simple, I think. And when you go back to the simplicity, like water, like going out, grounding yourself on the ground with your bare feet, these very simple things that you can do, which don't cost anything, are often, to me, where the truth and wisdom always lies. And you're going back to nature, aren't you? You're going back to that. I'm
Yeah.
a big fan of Victor Schauberger and
Oh,
Living
yeah.
Water. Anybody has never read his work, please find his work. Victor Schauberger, amazing work. That was, I think, in the 1930s, I think, in 1920s, 1930s.
Yeah.
But yes,
Mhm.
I think it's these things that are very simple, that's where the truth lies. And what could be
Mm.
more simple than actually that? The memory, the homeopathies, the mechanisms are in the memory of the water, which is inside of us.
Yeah. And isn't this just so beautifully homeopathic in the sense that we are literally returning to that original blueprint? We're
Yeah.
peeling back those layers and we're getting to the simplicity because homeopathy inherently, it can be so simple. It is so
But it is
simple.
simple. We
It is
complicate it.
simple. We complicate
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
But it is
We
simple
complicate it.
as that. And yeah, I also just want to be clear that I'm not, even what I've suggested today, I'm not saying this is the definitive way. This is exactly what's happening. It's more just I think it's a very coherent and biologically plausible hypothesis
Yeah.
of how not only how homeopathic remedies actually have the power that they do, but then how they are interacting with our body. And specifically, right, is something that I'm always, especially when working with a new client, I'm very clear about the fact that it's not the remedy that's doing the healing.
No.
Right. You are doing the healing. Your body is doing the healing. The remedy is simply there as that spark, as that ignition, as that
Yeah.
reminder.
The key
And
to the
so
key to the lock. Yeah.
that's it. That's it. Because sometimes our biosystem does get stuck. And so it reaches that locked door and it's like, where's the key? Where's the map?
Yeah.
And so this is where the remedy comes in. And the remedy, it's like, it's that code, it's the key code to unlock it. And if you think about it through the lens of water, the remedy is this light information. It's information and it's just giving your
Mm.
body the like, oh, okay, now I have the
Now I
information to
remember.
do this. Now I remember
Yeah.
and it unlocks the body's own memory, the water body's own memory, and then the water body proliferates that
Yeah.
throughout.
Absolutely. So what comes to mind is the book I had I think it was in my, I think it was my grandmother's, called The Water Babies, and these beautiful pictures of this very old book. But yeah, it's like I said, it's gentle water. It's gentle. Yes, water can also be a raging torrent, but
Mm.
it's very gentle. And yeah, it's really, I find it fascinating. And like I said, it's the difference. When we talk about systems of health, the key, the medicine is all powerful, which it is on the body because it's trying to control the body, trying to suppress the body when it's
Mm.
got symptoms. That's the pharmaceutical and allopathic model. Whereas the homeopathic model is the remedy is the key. And it's just a key. It's just like a key to a Ferrari. The key itself is not powerful. It's
Yeah,
just a key. But that
that's
interaction,
it.
as you said, with the ignition and then the engine roars, which is the vital force, the chi, the prana, whatever you want to call it, that's where the power lies. We've already got it. And I think that's incredibly empowering for anybody listening that, and I say this to my patients all the time, you've already got it. You've
You
already
do.
got it. We've
You
just got
do.
to stimulate it, tap into that, and let the body do its rest. So, yeah, amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So,
It's
any
so
final words there as we come to an end? Yes, we could talk about this for hours and hours,
we could,
and I'm going to
yeah.
get Yasmin to do some webinars, especially for the homeopathic community, because I think it's so crucial, where she'll go much more in depth around all this. But any final
Mhm.
words to say to anybody listening? Because we people practitioners, there's people just interested in homeopathy,
Yeah.
students of homeopathy. Any closing words around this, just to finish off?
Yeah, I suppose I'll speak to all the different groups here that are listening, wherever you are in your journey, whether you are new to homeopathy or interested or actually deep in it as a homeopath. I think the first thing really is just to echo Marcus's words and remind you that everything that we need is already within us and is also here on this planet, right? We have all the tools, all the remedies that we require to heal ourselves. We're actually returning to the original way because the biomedical model has really effectively only been around for just about 100 years. And we're actually returning to the way of truly listening to the body because that's really what the body is. The body is just trying to communicate with us through these symptoms, which are just signals of communication. And when we actually tap in and listen, so much healing takes place. And the most incredible thing is that we are effectively what I like to think of as walking liquid crystals.
Yeah,
And water is this structured, coherent, light responsive, and it's energetically active. And what I'm really, especially if you're a practitioner, what I would really love for you to sit with, take away, reflect on is that what if water is the bridge between information and physiology? What if water is that bridge for healing and yeah, there's never been a more exciting time, I think, to get into homeopathy or to be a homeopath, because I truly believe that in the next few years, with everything that is coming out around water science, around the emerging quantum biology of water, the behavior of water, this is going to give us the anchoring and the foundation and really the posture and the conviction and like, okay, there is this unshakable truth that homeopathy works. It is highly effective and it's very much here to stay. And it's the medicine of now, it's the medicine of future. And ultimately, it's the medicine that can heal so much within us and so much in the future generations to come. And yeah, it's just as simple as that. It's such a simple, beautiful medicine. So I just wanted to drop that in because
Yeah,
it's
thank you,
amazing.
Yasmin.
And
Yeah,
yeah,
thank you, Yasmin. I think that was great, and you just remind me of my teacher, mentor, friend, Dr. Robin Murphy, who would say, "Marcus, homeopathy is the medicine of the people. You know, everybody
hmm,
needs to know about it." And in the world that we're living in at the moment, homeopathy, the world needs healing more than ever, and the world needs homeopathy. So, thank you, Yasmin. That was
absolutely.
a fantastic conversation here, and we'll put in the show notes where you can get in touch with Yasmin if you want to further the conversation or carry on the conversation. And thank you everybody for
Yeah.
listening, and
Thank
take care.
you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Marcus.
Thank you. Take care.